streaming live, so you're on camera. Well, good morning. Welcome to the June meeting of the Wandsworth CCG governing body. Let's do apologies first of all. So we've got apologies from Nikki Williams and from Dawn Warwick, but we have here Cathy Kerr for the first time. Welcome, Cathy. Cathy's Director of Adult Social Services for Wandsworth and Richmond. And we're expecting Stephen, so I don't know where he is, and we're expecting Di as well, aren't we? So we haven't had apologies from them, so hopefully they'll be here shortly. Yeah, maybe. Is it?
I don't know.
Okay. Does that make us quorate? Yes, it does. We're quorate. And declarations of interest. We've had the register updated this month, I think, Sandra, is that right? There's some additions. But anything else specific to the agenda?
So, potential for GPs around the enhanced care pathway, particularly the rapid response element, may be commissioned by individual practices. Yeah,
thank you. That goes for all those. Okay, thank you very much. So, shall we? So we've got it's a slightly unusual meeting today because the cut of part 1 and part 2 is separate because we've got a quite substantive part 2 items to discuss. So consequently, we hope to finish by 11:30. Should we do the minutes of the? Well, we've got 2 sets of minutes actually. One from the April meeting of the board and one from the extraordinary meeting that we had to do the annual accounts. So the 13th of April one first of all. Anything on accuracy first of all? Very good. Thank you for those, Sandra. And should we just go through matters arising and actions? I think on the 038, the performance report, so it wasn't an action for this meeting, Sean, but just a reminder to go into the end of year report, the provider summary position.
Yes, that's how we are, and for the IGC we'll have that for the board.
Thank you. Lucy, we had an issue on the CQRG summaries which you were going to take up. Just because...
Yes, that's been taken up with the CSU and will be revised for following the next meeting.
That's great, thank you. And then we had some questions in open space which we have sent responses to, written responses to all of the people who asked the questions. I think there was one just in particular, Lucy, I wanted to pick up on the, the ex-serviceman issue. So, any actions from that now?
We have a meeting, what's called our technical reference group this afternoon, and it's on the agenda for that meeting.
Oh, great, thank you. And then, Andy, the pharmacy team issue didn't really require a response. It sort of needed us to take it forward, really.
Yeah, and Nick is doing that with the local pharmaceutical committee.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to the other set of minutes, which is the 25th of May extraordinary meeting of the board. Anything on accuracy there? Thank you very much. There weren't any matters arising from that because of the nature of the meeting. Very good, thank you. So, are we going to have any items for AOB? Anyone know already that there's anything to raise? No? Great, thank you. Right, let's go on to part B then, so the operational focus. So every meeting we try and do a focus area, and this time it's quality. It's the first time we've really done this in this way, so it's sort of a bit of a learning exercise really. Sean, do you want to kick off and introduce?
I'll do a very brief introduction, but Eileen Bryant, our Interim Deputy Director of Quality and Lead Nurse, is here as well, so she's been doing most of the presentation. So yes, thanks Nicola. So it's a fairly new report, obviously following the new format as well. What we've tried to do is pull together the work of the quality team, what we've been doing around ensuring quality of services and our major providers, and so you'll see we'll take you through what the main issues have been dealt with by the team and also in the clinical quality review groups, and Eileen will just touch on that, and we've provided some of the highlights for each of the major providers, both acute and mental health, and also the out of hours 111 provider. And then we've tried to look at some of the themes in terms of serious incidents, make a difference alert system, which the board is well aware of, and also some of the other work we're doing with care homes and so on. But if Eileen's just going to take us through all of that, if that's okay.
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you, Sean. As Sean has said, my name is Eileen Bryant. I'm Interim Deputy Director of Policy, and I'm also the lead nurse for Wandsworth CCG.
Eileen, do we need a mic?
Oh,
yeah. No, bring it over. Yeah. That's it.
Hello.
No, don't hold it too close.
Okay, so what we've got here, we've tried, as Sean has said, tried to give you the main highlights of some of the areas of good practice with our providers and some of the areas of quality concerns that we're working on. So if we start off with St. George's Hospital, who are our main providers, there are a number of areas of good practice that, the first one is around their engagement with the quality work. So there's good engagement. We've got a clinical quality review meetings that we have on a monthly basis, and we've done a lot of work with them. There's been a number of policy concerns as well as some financial difficulties over the year, but we have worked with them very hard. They've been engaging with us, and we've got a number of action plans. So some of the main areas are around the workforce, so some recruitment and retention and turnover issues, as well as staff survey. There's issues with staff survey, and they're linked with the vacancy rate. So there are issues around cover for breaks, to take breaks and stuff that they are working on. There's also areas around their outpatients capacity and systems that they've got in place for managing their outpatients, and that's actually reflected in some of the cancer weights, where we've got quality issues around the 2-week wait and 62-day wait as well. And the serious incidents, we're doing some work around the timeliness of actually reporting serious incidents. The standard is that they should report it within 48 hours. They've got internal systems in place that actually provide a barrier to them being able to report it in 48 hours. And so we're working with them, and we've got an action plan in place. And then for their community services as well, I think staffing seems to be the main issue that we're working with them on. They've got some strategies in place, and they're looking at international recruitments as well, so we're working with them. Chelsea and Westminster, they have merged with West Middlesex recently, so we are also working with them on some of their systems. But the main quality areas around end-of-life care was an area that was identified in CQC the year before. So for 2015-16, we've actually worked with them on an action plan, and they've actually improved so much that they're one of the trusts that are going to be implementing the gold standard framework for end-of-life care. So that's a real positive in terms of the work that we've done with them. The mental health trusts, South West London and St. George's Mental Health Trust, there were a number of areas around the number of suicides and deliberate harm, which is coming through the serious incidents, and we're working with them on that as well. And then Care UK, which is our GP out of hours. There were a number of issues around staffing and recruitment of GPs to the out of hours and infection control. But again, we've got some action plans in place in terms of addressing that. So if we then move on to serious incidents, what we've done is just giving you a flavour of the serious incidents in St. George's Hospital. So what you see in the graph there is really some of the themes that are coming out of the serious incidents. There were issues around never events. So the never events are events that, as the name says, that we don't expect a trust to have those incidents. So it's around retain foreign objects during an operation, wrong site surgery. And so we have worked with them. They had about 8 of them in the year. We've worked with them, so actually it's reduced significantly in the last month. Within this financial year, they've only had 1. So that's a great achievement there. And then we have got the Make a Difference system that we've got, quality alert system. That's actually worked very well in terms of giving us early warning signs of any issues, quality issues. So some of them have been around referral and capacity. So the outpatients concerns that we picked up actually came from those alerts. So it gives us early warning signs. And what we've done on page 18 is giving you a flavor of some of the themes that we've worked with. And where we do a thematic analysis, we then have a focused meeting and workshop with them to actually address those issues. So a number of the issues that you see listed there, we've actually got action plans with the trust and are working on improving those. And then complaints. We also manage complaints within the trust, and the number of complaints are around, some of them are complaints, some of them are actually GP, MP inquiries, or just general queries around services that they've got rather than complaints. So over the year we had 72 complaints altogether, 16 general inquiries, and 11 of them were MP inquiries as well from patients. And they seem to be around continuing healthcare and funding issues, really, whether they meet the criteria or not. And then primary care is another area that we've been working hard on, because since April of this year, we've taken full delegated responsibility for commissioning the GP contract. So within the year 2015-16, we have worked with the primary care team to put together to set up a clinical quality review group through which we'll be monitoring the quality of primary care in the coming year. Safeguarding is also another area that we've worked with, and in terms of safeguarding adults, from April 2015, safeguarding adults became a statutory responsibility, so it's put in the same footing as safeguarding children. So we have got systems now in place to make sure that we meet the statutory requirements of ensuring that our patients are safe. And within that, we also have worked around working with the local authority to look at the care homes and quality in care homes. We also looked at our continuing healthcare service, and we've changed the contract now to make sure that the services the quality is of a higher standard. We've got the systems in place for all of our large providers. What we are wanting to do going forward is looking at our smaller contracts. So the smaller contracts are care home contracts. They are contracts for placing learning disabilities and mental health patients in placement. So that is the area that we're going to be working on to make sure that the systems that we've got in place are as robust as the ones we've got in place for our main providers. And as I said, with the care homes, we've now got a system in place where we've got a quality dashboard, and it's jointly with the local authorities. So we're working with them to look at quality issues around whether it's safeguarding alerts or serious incidents, and we are managing them jointly. So overall, in terms of our risk as well, so we manage a risk register within the quality group, but then it links in with the overall corporate risk register, and that's managed throughout the year and through the quality group as well. So in summary, really, what I would say is that we have got a good system now in place for all our larger contracts, and the team have worked hard in actually working with providers to manage any quality concerns that come. So we are pretty much assured that we have got the systems right in the larger contracts, and we just need to develop them further. Going forward, where we need to do some more work is our smaller contracts and having similar systems in place to assure ourselves of quality. So I'm happy to take any questions now, and also comments as to whether you feel the style of the report is appropriate and whether there's any other information that you would want for the future.
Thank you.
Okay, Eileen, thank you very much. So, yeah, I know you're relatively new to the CCG. This is quite a lot to have achieved in the time that you've been here, and just pulling together what is going on. So, thank you very much. Sean, any kind of anything to add at this point? No. So, you know, for our CCG, quality is absolutely at the heart of what we want to do. So this is really, really important. And even though this is a good description of the things that are going on, it sort of underplays the amount of work that we've done in the last three years, really. And I think it's really important that we're able to bring it to life and reflect what the things that you're describing in this report actually in everything that we do. And we know when we've started reporting on things previously, we've always put everything in a report or taken a decision about what we're going to put in a report, and then we evolve it with time. And I expect that's what's going to happen with this. But I think it's a really good start. And really it's about where we focus and develop this in order to enable the board to understand where our risks are, really, where we might not understand where quality isn't right and where we need to take some actions. But it is a really good start, so thank you. Comments and questions from others? Hoda.
Yeah, I agree with Nicola. I think this is a really good starting point to build on and evolve, so I take this into consideration. I've got a number of comments, just very briefly. So there is, for example, you hear about St George's being best in maternity, but we don't know how the others are benchmarking. So it would be good to have a dashboard where you're comparing the various hospitals together, for example, and what outcomes you look at. So the report talks about having safe levels, etc. But I'm not sure really what the standard is. And for example, cesarean rates, recording of FGM, and so on. So this is something that probably we would like to see more of in the future. There is a mention of kind of interdepartmental issues around intervention, radiology, and vascular surgery. Obviously, these are very key services and very saving services. I would like to know if there's been any impact on patients' outcomes in these. Shall I list my, or do you want to answer them? Yeah. So there is that, and I know I'm pushed for time, and I'll just stop at the third point, which is the never events. In total, there are 21 never events when you list them. Is this expected? Obviously, never event should be never, and it should be zero. But is this the kind of thing you should be kind of like expected? Is St George's way off the Richter scale around never events? So we would like to understand that.
Okay, Hoda, thank you.
So, sorry, I mean, another important.
You see, you should have got in there.
Perinatal mortality at St George's Hospital. Again, it sounds kind of a statement, but it sounds really serious stuff. Like it says significant higher levels of perinatal mortality at Kingston Hospital. I would like to understand what really is going on and what action is being taken.
So never events were 8. The others are a different category. They're a different category. Yeah, so they were 8. Yeah.
But it's the same question.
Yeah. No, is that? Yeah. So Eileen, where do you want to start with that?
So the interventional radiology is the one that we can start off with. Yes, that happened around November, and it resulted in students being removed from the service. There was actually a risk summit undertaken to really look at the impact on patients in terms of patient care and safety. There really wasn't any impact, and we've managed it. So there are monthly meetings that are held that are actually managed by NHS England, the medical director, and so we have got an action plan in place. But it started off with a risk summit where we did the analysis of what's the impact on patients. A lot of it was to do with the behavior problems between professionals, and obviously, and so we had to look at the impact on patient care, and we didn't assess it as impacting on patient care, and we have actually monitored it, and it is still being monitored on a monthly basis. So there are actions in place for that. The never events, as I said, there were 8 of them. Never events, as the name suggests, is that we never want to see them. And so there were 8 of them. I mean, compared across London, so we've got a ground across London, they are sort of middle ground, if you like. So they're not the worst and they're not the best. And so that is actually on our corporate risk register that we are managing that. I'm pleased to say that. So what we do in the clinical quality review group is that where we picked up an issue like never events, we then do a workshop, like a deep dive with them to try and understand some of the issues. And so some of them have either policies they've put in place or individuals not checking the policy or not checking, the checking process is not being right. So we then look at what the root causes are and then put in actions, and the group then monitors the action. So we have seen an improvement. So we just had, in the last 3-4 months, there's only been one. And again, so where there is a never event, there's a detailed root cause analysis report that comes to the clinical quality review group, and we then analyze to look at what caused it and what they have put in place. So that's how we gain assurances that things are improving.
Sean, did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, just as well, can I say, it's important. I mean, never events they shouldn't happen. It doesn't necessarily mean though that any significant harm or even any harm has necessarily happened to a patient, as you know, because it might. I mean, sometimes, for example, a retained object, it might be that it was detected almost straight away within a few minutes, say a retained swab or whatever, and then it's dealt with. And so actually, there is an assessment made. It doesn't necessarily mean the patient has come to any harm at all. And quite a few of these never events at St George's are in that sort of category. But it's the sort of thing that may conceivably have resulted in significant harm if it hadn't been detected. And so it's worth noting that. And the same applies sometimes on, wrong site surgery can, for example, mean a hospital's done a procedure which actually was needed for that patient, but actually they should have had a different procedure done. They're on two waiting lists, if you like, and they've done one first, and they should have done them in the other order. So it doesn't necessarily, it means there's an issue with processes being incorrect. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that harm has happened, but they're all, as Eileen has said, they're all absolutely assessed at the CQRG. Whereas
actually the other category, the unexpected or potentially avoidable death, that's serious stuff. So these are labels, but we need to look at all of these. Indeed, exactly, what the other question? Maternity.
Oh, so the maternity, in terms of what?
St George's is significantly higher. Kingston, sorry.
Oh, Kingston. I don't actually have.
On maternity, on the issue raised on maternity, I mean, NHS England do produce a helpful policy dashboard. It's at the moment for internal use, so it's not actually published, unfortunately. So we can't share it with the board. But they're working on it, and I think eventually the aim is that they will be made public. But we do have quite useful information, therefore, to benchmark different providers, include some information on maternity, for example. In fact, I'm actually going to a meeting this afternoon where we do that across South London. So we do have information on some of the indicators you were talking about, in terms of maternity services, to be able to see where a provider, how a provider looks. And Mike wants to come in, I can see as well.
Go, Mike.
Yeah, so I'll just answer as on the South West London maternity lead. There are 2 networks that deal with this. So there's a network of the maternity network, South West London, and there's also a perinatal network for the whole of South London. Both produce dashboards that give not only mortality and morbidity rates, but all the rates that you earlier asked about, so there are detection rates, intervention rates, induction rates, early booking rates, everything. It's public data. You're welcome to go for a bit. We don't provide it here because it's a lot of data really for a high-level board report. Perinatal mortality, I wouldn't start someone to lecture a public health consultant on the determinants of perinatal mortality. I don't have the answer for why Kingston units mortality rate is higher, statistically significantly higher. And I don't know whether that's related to the population they serve or factors within their trust. I know that the perinatal network, of course, looks at factors within trust, so neonatal unit performance. But just to say that those services, of course, aren't commissioned by CCGs, but by specialised or by NHS.
So, Mike, I mean, this is really important. Is being continued to look at, to be looked at, to understand? I mean, yes, there are determinants of health for perinatal mortality. Are we sure that these are being addressed together with the local authorities concerned? I mean, St George's, if you look at the population of St George's, for example, in terms of deprivation, I can imagine, I can almost bet that it is a more deprived population than the Kingston population. Yes, the perinatal mortality is higher. Really good to understand, because it is really an important issue for me.
Can I just say that any of the issues that are identified, so these issues are identified through the clinical quality review groups, and then there would then be focused groups and workshops done with the various, whether the medical directors, to look specifically at the issues that have been raised, and then it gets reported back to the clinical quality review group. So it's not something that is just mentioned and left. It's mentioned as issues, and then for each of the meetings we'll pick up a number of issues, whether 2 or 3 issues, and actually have focused discussion on it around assurances that we receive about what has been done to address those. So I mean, I'm happy to.
It'd be good to see the action plans that have been
yeah. So a lot of these issues that are mentioned will have action plans behind them. So I'm happy to share that with you.
So I'm just thinking on this particular issue, we should just make sure we round this off by taking it into IGC probably and having a look at things there. We could do that. Thank you. Yeah. Andy was next, I think.
Thanks for the paper, and I think certainly Eileen, thank you for your input and your expertise that you brought to the developing primary care approach as well. It's much appreciated. My question really is around the management side, so on page 2 or page 26 of your packs. In terms of what has not gone well, it talks about capacity issues within the quality team which could potentially impact upon the team's ability. And then when you look at the opportunities for the future developments, which obviously doesn't really include primary care in that, there's a huge amount of work still to be done. So I just wondered how you sort of prioritise, how you manage your team. Is there anything else that the board can do? Is it about the wider push of the organisation or the business?
Well, in terms of, yes, we put there around the capacity, because obviously our quality function is growing, and as we're developing more and more in terms of the systems in place, we are constantly reviewing the resource that we've got within the quality group. So within the quality team, so we have got a quality group that actually oversees the work of the quality team. It's actually, the meeting is this afternoon, and quality team resource is on the agenda. So that is where we actually look at what capacity have we got, and therefore what additional resource do we need. So that is being considered, and we're reviewing.
Jamie next, and then Lucy. Jamie.
Thank you. It's really great to this report. I think it's a really positive development that we get a separate policy report. 2 comments. My first, actually, Andy asked, just something about the report sent to me. What are the resources that are going into this one? It just felt as if it was a bit fragile. The second one is on complaints. Just looking at the page on complaints, 72 complaints to the CCG. I find it might be useful to be clear whether they're complaints about CCG or to the CCG.
Yeah. So these complaints are to do with commissioning. So they're about the services that we've commissioned rather than provider complaints. So when you look at the next page, it gives you a breakdown of some of the areas, the themes that come out of it. So a lot of this around continuing healthcare, because so these are about services that we have commissioned. So it's about the commissioning arrangements or services that we've directly commissioned. So some of them are about continuing healthcare, children's commissioning, and individual funding requests. So where people have got complaints about decisions that have been made about the funding of services.
Actually, I haven't got that slide. Is anybody else missing that one? No? You haven't got it? No, Ali, we haven't got the breakdown slide, so that probably prompted the question, actually, because it's missing. Yeah. So just sorry, just we were all looking for our slide then. Just say that again. Say what the themes were.
So let me just get it again. So there's continuing healthcare has been an area where people have complained a lot, whether it's around decisions that have been made around whether they meet the criteria for funding for health, and what was the other one? Individual funding review. So where you need specialist treatment, and commissioners need to approve the funding where people have not actually got the approval. The complaints have come down that way. And the final one was about children's commissioning. So we commissioned some children's services, so there may be issues around. So they're all around the commissioning of the services rather than the provision of the services. So it's decisions that have been made around the services that we've commissioned. So it's the commissioning that is issues.
So, Lucy, just to check on the children's one, do you think those are around children with high level need? Is it those kind of services, do you think?
So yes, we are aware of a small number of but very complex complaints.
Yes.
One in particular that's it's very detailed about the issues that a parent wants to raise with us that I know is being worked through with an appropriate level of detail and response to ensure that we can meet the needs of that family. It's very much working in collaboration with the local authority.
Yeah. Okay. Jamie, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, thanks. In that case, this is an analysis of complaints about the CCG. I just wondered if the board had an interest in complaints to our providers. I know it wouldn't always be about Wandsworth residents, but at least it would give us a feel of the scale of complaints against our providers.
So, Eileen, do you want to talk about how we do that?
I mean, we do that, and we actually manage that as part of the clinical quality review group. So we do get a quality report from providers that details all the complaints or ours and all of that. So I'm happy to include in the future if that's something that you would be interested in.
With the board.
Lucy next, and then Kathy. Lucy.
So we also welcome the report that is a really good summary of the work that goes on, and building on Andy and Jamie's points about the capacity. So I'm doing a quick back-of-packet calculation, because I think the work that we do around CQRGs, the quality review groups, really well established in acute services, well established in mental health, work in progress in primary care, and we've had arrangements in place for community for some time as well, which covers about 4/5 of our commissioning portfolio. And so as someone with a level of oversight across all of those quality surveillance arrangements, it's the other fifth, which you have highlighted on page 26, that I think we have some challenge to assure ourselves that we have the same level of scrutiny for small placements, small providers, some of which are very one-off type arrangements like physiotherapy, dietary, some of which are placements caring for some of our most vulnerable patients. And we had a meeting of our placements panel yesterday where the contracts team had done an audit of all of our individual placements and looking at the arrangements in place for advocacy and primary health care. And it was a wonderful report that showed that each of our placements, every single organisation was demonstrating that they had proper primary care arrangements in place and really good advocacy. And then we asked our nursing team to go out to those placements, is that your experience? And they thought not. So there is a real question then about how we are providing assurance to ourselves, given that contractually we follow up in all the ways that we need to, but the experience of people on the ground might not be the same. Yeah. So to really go and test for every single patient in every single placement, the capacity required would be enormous. So where's the sense check about how we do this in the way that is reasonable to really ensure we're protecting patients?
Yeah, right, thank you.
I can answer that. So we are doing a piece of work on that. So we have now got an oversight of all of our smaller contractors, about 126 contracts in all. And we're doing a piece of work where a member of the quality team are actually meeting up with all of the contract managers to look at what data are you collecting, where are the gaps in terms of quality. So we've got that piece of work going on, and that's why I'm putting here around capacity and resource for the future, because we want to make sure that we put the same systems that we've got in terms of assuring our quality of this larger contracts, that we've got similar system in place for the smaller contracts. So that is work that we're in the process of doing.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Kathy?
Yes, just a comment really rather than a question. So I really welcome this. From a local authority point of view, we've been really pleased with the joint work we've done with the CCG and supported by Health Watch, so Peter chairs our joint quality board. I think it kind of plays into the resources point about actually we think that quality board is providing a good place for us to kind of stop duplicating efforts. So actually we have contracts with nursing homes, the CCG has as a place for us to share intelligence and actually look at how we do things sensibly together. So I think it's still relatively early days, but I think we're really pleased that that is a joint piece of work and look at how we do work together and rationalise our kind of monitoring of those contracts that we have.
Definitely, that has worked very well, and we do provide the quality data as well, input into it, and attend the board, and I think that's the way forward really in terms of where there are opportunities for joint working. Then that's where what we would do.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to draw things to a close then. So just to reiterate, really, good starting point. So thank you very much for all the work that's gone on, and we'll continue to build on that. So I'm just thinking of future reports. So the board needs to be assured that all the systems and processes are in place, so that we, understand that we're monitoring quality effectively. But I think it might be helpful for us to sort of keep it live for the board. If next time we have a quality report, we have in addition to the general report, perhaps a focus area. So we know that your individual areas of concern are going through the different groups, but I think it would be helpful for the board to have examples of how that's been looked at. So, we take maternity to IGC, but if there's an issue there, then actually think we should bring that to board and play it out here as well. So maybe if we could look at this in IGC and think of which areas we might usefully bring to board next time, but that would be good. Okay, Eileen, thank you very, very much for that, and Sean, for you and all your team as well. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going on to the enhanced care pathway procurement. Andy, you leading on this, thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is essentially for the award of the contract for the PACT enhanced care pathway. I'll do a little bit of an introduction and then I'll hand over to various colleagues. Before I start, I just want to say that Rebecca Wellburn should really stand up and take a bow. Stay exactly where you are. Because actually this came from, I think, Rebecca's brainchild, thinking about how we can better use our CAS services, that's community adult health services, and how we can really start to integrate with primary care and social care colleagues as well. I'd also like to introduce Peter Wheelwright. Peter is on to comment to us from the civil service. He won't tell us which part of the civil service, but he does have a look of James Bond about him. Now that he's relaxed, I'll hand over to him. So before I start, I just wanted to very briefly say that the PACT enhanced care pathway is really how we start to manage, in a multidisciplinary approach, those top 500 patients within PACT. I think the board will all be relatively familiar with PACT. And really these 500 patients we've analysed and identified, they need a bit more of a coordinated approach. And to pick out some of the specific elements, there's the rapid response function, which is actually available to all registered patients within Wandsworth, not just those within PACT. And that's really how we can really respond to patients who need an urgent home visit within 2 hours. All the evidence suggests that if you can do that and manage them in the community, then far less likely to need an onward hospital admission and be far more happier and healthier as a consequence. Pharmacy reviews as well. So pharmacy medicines management is incredibly important for these polypharm patients. So making sure that they're not just on the right medication, but they know how and when to take them and to follow them. The phlebotomy service. So this is about housebound patients who need bloods taking. This has been identified by GP colleagues for a number of years as a big service gap, and I think has caused a number of tensions between GPs and district nurses. So I think that's a very welcome service gap we've been able to address for these patients as well. Wound care. So wound care is actually quite a specialist area, but again it's something that between primary and community care we've never been able to address. So hope that this service initiative will help try and manage these patients better and really start to upskill practice nurses and community staff as well. And then finally, the key element of coordination is the notion of health and social care coordinators. So we have a very well established social care presence for a lot of our PACT patients, but this is really how in every single practice we can have a health and care coordinator. So the patient knows who to speak to, They have all of their records, all of their information. It means that the patient isn't kept hanging around for hours and hours or days on end because their care is being far better coordinated. So that's a very brief run through of what the model is trying to achieve. I'm going to hand over to Peter now, who, along with Kate and Rebecca, have been taking us through the procurement process.
Thank you very much, Andy. As Andy said, this pathway is all about managing the collaborative management of approximately 500 of the most vulnerable elderly adult patients in Wandsworth. Part one of the report in front of you today goes through the main clinical elements of the service. I won't reiterate those, but as Andy said, it's particularly important to note that the rapid response element, which provides a 2-hour clinical response to someone's deteriorating condition, is available to all adults in Wandsworth, not just the 500 identified under the enhanced care pathway. And clearly the objective of this service is to try and reduce unplanned secondary care admissions. There's a financial breakdown of the different elements of the service in section 5 later on. But before we switch ahead, it's also important to note in section 1.2 that the enhanced care pathway is a key part of the multi-specialty community provider, which the board will probably know the lead provider for this is going to be appointed later in the year, and so the contract includes a innovation clause to require the enhanced care pathway provider to enter into a subcontract with the lead provider for the MCP once they are appointed, so those two join up correctly. Section 2 talks about the market testing process itself. This was an open procurement process designed with input from the NHS Shared Business Services procurement teams and also capstick solicitors. And expression of interests were advertised on the 22nd of January this year. At stage 1 we received 2 bids, of which only one of them, the bid from Battersea Healthcare Community Interest Company, passed the initial evaluation process. The second bid failed to meet the minimum criteria due to limited responses to 3 separate questions and failure of a pass-fail criteria. So the panel agreed to invite Battersea Healthcare CIC to stage 2, and they subsequently submitted an invitation to tender submission in March. The bid was then evaluated by the panel, found to pass the evaluation criteria and also meet the affordability threshold. And as such, Battersea Healthcare CIC were invited to attend stage 3 bidder interview on the 12th of April. Subsequent to that, the panel agreed to recommend award of the enhanced care pathway contract to Battersea Healthcare Community Interest Company, pending further assurance in a number of key areas, which we'll come on to in section 4 of the paper in front of you. The areas that the panel wanted additional assurance on in particular were that the proposed model was deliverable within the agreed budget, and largely just further operational detail and costing around the particularly high spending items, the rapid response element and the health and social care coordinator posts. And we also wanted to see evidence of initial engagement with key stakeholders and agreement of KPIs and review processes. So following that recommendation, the CCG has conducted a series of assurance meetings with Battersea Healthcare over the past several weeks, and we're pleased to report that they have developed detailed process pathways for the rapid response and health and social care coordinator elements, detailing how those will work, mediating between different elements of primary and social care. And they've also started active engagement with key stakeholders, including GPs and private providers, and also the 14 pharmacies in Wandsworth that currently provide domiciliary MUR services to scope out how those will be provided. And as such, we're satisfied that the Battersea Healthcare CIC have demonstrated the stakeholder engagement capacity and capability to deliver the enhanced care pathway. And we'd like to ask the board to come to a determination as to whether they're happy to award the contract to Battersea Healthcare CIC for a term of the 1st of July 2016 to the 31st of March 2019.
Excellent, Pete. Thank you very much. That was very clear. So, comments and questions on this? Graham.
I've got 3 issues, so I'll speak to them all, and then if you could respond. So, in the final evaluation, we were down to a sole bidder. So, did that fit with our market assessment at the beginning of the process of the likely number of providers out there? So, were we disappointed or surprised by the fact we had a single bidder at the end of the process? The rapid response element of the service, we know from previous discussions there are significant issues there about the provider's ability to scale up, scale down in quite a variable situation in terms of the capacity demand of the service. So what level of assurance do we have about the preferred provider's ability to do that? And then just in terms of the money, just what process was gone through in terms of the value for money assessment of this as making this recommendation to the board?
Okay. Andy, do you want to kick off with that?
That's the first point. So in terms of the fact that we were down to a single bidder, I think first of all it indicates the fact that we actually designed the service specification so there is very little profit margin as such, because we knew exactly what the various elements should cost. Obviously a lot of this had already been costed and worked through previously as well. Clearly, obviously, the value of the contract is relatively small, if I would say, in terms of a private provider. It covers a number of elements that involve working with health and social care colleagues, so it is quite complex as well. So it's not necessarily something a bidder could come in and pick up straight away. Having said that, obviously, part of the criteria was not about how quickly you can do it, but what would the process be to establish various networks, various relationships as well. So I'm not necessarily surprised or disappointed that we had a single bidder. What I would say, though, is that the fact that we had a single bidder didn't make our process any less robust. Hopefully other colleagues involved can testify to that. We followed very clear procurement rules and regulations, and I think probably because we had one bidder, we were doubly keen to make sure that they were the right bidder as well, because some of this, as I said, is quite complex, so it involves a lot of relationship working as opposed to pure processes, and then obviously clinical service delivery as well. I think the second point around rapid response, so you're very correct that this was actually a service that was decommissioned from community adult health services owing to, I think, various concerns, one of which was around how the provider would relate to primary care, so to general practices. And that's why we're very keen to procure it as part of this contract, because it is about how primary care and community care work together and work with social care as well. And as Peter said, we undertook a series of assurance exercises as to how the provider would not just deliver it as a standalone item, but how they would really integrate it with general practice. So one of the things I mentioned at the start around conflicts of interest is that the provider's approach to the model, which we quite like, was actually trying to work with individual practices, those practices who feel they can deliver an urgent rapid response visit that is, of course, over and above their core PMS contract. So we undertook a series of assurance meetings, and we've got a range of flow diagrams which obviously we're very happy to share to the board, because obviously what we were concerned about is not to get the old service, because the old service didn't work. So it was about how would they, have those very clear relationships established with general practices, and how would they be able to demonstrate that they can actually meet the requirement, which is an urgent visit within 2 hours. So I think we are as assured as we can be about that point, and obviously we recognise that we'll be going live over the summer and the autumn period, and one of the things we're putting in place is a CQRG type approach for this, to look at the entire pathways, and obviously a very clear contracting process as well. So I think we are as assured as we can be for now, recognising that it's a different model the provider is proposing to employ, but obviously we'll keep it very tightly monitored as well.
Just the last point, can I push it a bit further? So the 2-hour access is a really important kind of standard, the principle of what we've commissioned here. So is it also reflected contractually? So I understand that, we will review and monitor it, but actually is there a potential of a contractual action on it if it is not delivered?
Yeah, there is as well. So part of this contract is obviously relevant to KPIs, and one of the things, probably the highest portion, is around the rapid response service, because we know that's an area we've tried in the past, and actually we haven't really delivered it to any great consistency. So I think we've probably learnt our lessons in terms of how it should be contracted, and also that reflects in terms of how it should be delivered as well. So obviously that's the one key thing we will be monitoring particularly closely.
So just to pick that up, as Andy said, the sort of proposed model for this is that practices will be able to opt in if they feel that they can provide the service themselves. But there's also going to be a sort of backstop option of the of an out-of-hours provider to pick up some smaller practices that may be less able or less willing to pick up that service themselves. So one of the things we were very keen to ensure was the sort of the equity of service between users of different practices.
Okay, thank you. It was the value for money test.
So obviously the typical due diligence was obviously conducted on both organisations, and obviously Battersea Healthcare CIC made it through to the second phase. In terms of these specific areas, so we basically listed an indicative budget because these were areas predominantly posts that we had worked through in quite some detail before with various colleagues in Rebecca's team as well. I think one of the things that I would say is that we gave them an indicative sum because obviously we wanted to try and test the innovation of the provider rather than say you will employ 2 people on this specific day to do this specific test. But clearly what we have behind this is a range of minimum expected activity levels. So what we don't want to just get is something that budgetary looks right but actually doesn't deliver in terms of what we would expect it to actually deliver from an activity level as well. And the contract is actually reflected to that extent as well. To pick up a point that Neil and I discussed recently, the budget is released based on actual expenditure. So it's not necessarily a block contract in one go, it's based on if you can demonstrate you've got these people in post and if they are delivering that to that as well. And the level of the KPIs in there is such that the provider really needs to deliver and do what it needs to do to actually ensure that they, in essence, get the money.
Yeah, okay.
Steve and then Lucy.
Can I just ask, could you clarify a bit about the health and social care coordination? Where does social care stop and start? I mean, apart from the word, you'd actually talked more about community care. I wasn't quite clear where social services fit into this, or were they separate?
So I can start, but obviously colleagues feel free to chip in. So we have, as I said, quite a long and good record now with how we involve and how we work directly with social workers for our PACT patients. So this is for all of our PACT patients. In terms of the health and social care coordinators, and we have had Sydney Hill, who's one of the managers from social care, as part of not just our evaluation process, but also part of the service specification development as well. It's really to recognise that a lot of patients, particularly these patients, don't just have health needs and separate social needs. Often it's about how you try and bring them together. And so we anticipate these health and social care coordinators, who will be based within general practice, will not just be able to link in with the existing community health services teams, but embedded within the CAS teams are those social care posts as well. So I think it's about these people being very clear about their health and care perspectives, which doesn't just include social care, it includes the community sector, voluntary sector, it includes self-management elements as well. So it's really an attempt to coordinate all of that person's needs, whether it's health or social care. It is obviously the top 500, so it is a start. We might think, actually, you know what, this model doesn't work, we need to think about a different approach to it. But the essence, and again, the evidence from colleagues like Kingsford shows that if you try and manage the patient holistically, and attempt to do that obviously is through the care coordination being central, then you've got a better chance at giving that patient better outcomes and keeping them at home than you have in a very disparate function.
So can I just make sure I've understood it correctly? So they will be linking with social services staff in the local authority. That's my...
Yeah.
Cathy.
Can I just pick that up? If I may, it's really the kind of key coordination mechanism in this to make sure that we are tying the different organisations together. Is the weekly multidisciplinary team meetings. So originally a GP will come up with a care plan in a 45-minute consultation. But then these will go to their multidisciplinary team meetings where they'll bring in the elements from community care, social care, mental health, if need be, to all get around the table and agree what that joint plan should be. And then equally, those patients will be flagged on each of the different systems within each organisation. So Cerner, Framework, EMIS, and RIO, so that those organisations will be able to identify the fact that someone is an ECP patient and has a joint care plan that will be hosted on EMIS.
So, Cathy, you go then, I'll thank you.
I don't know if I'm clarifying this, Andrew, but and I think it's probably something I need to take away just to make sure I better, and in fact Rebecca colleagues might be able to explain it better. As I understand it, the health and social care coordinator will be a part of essentially the contract with the CIC, but the statutory social services function won't be a formal part of the contract. But the whole idea of having these people in the teams is to make sure that actually we're kind of joining those bits together. So actually it's kind of not everything is in the contract, but those roles are about making sure the whole pathway comes together.
Yeah, that's spot on. It's not taking anything statutory away from the local authorities, but it is recognising that we can coordinate care and input for these patients better together.
Yeah. I mean, I think looking to the future, we might want to think about actually how that statutory bit comes into the contract as well. But let's walk before we start running.
Yes. And just to flag, so the practicalities of this, the health and social care coordinators are new posts. They're probably going to be done in different ways by different types of people initially, so that we understand what the best models are, and they need to be really sighted, because they're likely to come from health, be really sighted on the social care element of this, and there's quite a lot of training needed for these people, otherwise they will be a bit blindsided to social care if we're not careful, because I think it's the hard bit to do actually. And then the other thing is just to say, Peter, you've correctly flagged that the care plans need to be on all the different systems. I mean, I'm just thinking, oh my God, all the different systems. This is really, really difficult, and this is just a practical way that we're going to manage this, but we really need to look forward to see how we're going to be doing this better in the future, because that's tricky, isn't it, when they're on all the different systems.
And obviously for the last year or so, we've been working on care plan training as well. So it's one thing populating it, but it's one thing actually doing it with the patient and doing it right as well. But as you say, this is a step to try and get the various agencies around the same table to talk about the same patient, and I think we can learn from this and then move on, as Catherine says, think about bigger umbrellas we get on.
Yeah, good. Lucy, got to you eventually.
So it builds on your point actually, Nicola. So I think this contract does two things, one of which is provide a new, innovative, enhanced, bespoke and wholly welcome service to the 500 patients, which I think has been talked about at the board in the past. And the second bit is it transfers an element of service from a provider which it says is decommissioned, Wandsworth Community Services, but very firmly places it within this primary care setting for all the reasons that have been outlined. I just wondered if you had any concerns or any mitigations about the loss of that relationship with community services. We have increased integration in one area, just seeing a separate barrier emerge in another.
I think that's a valid point. So I think there have been a lot of conversation with community. So the community services, Wandsworth Community Services, as part of George's, have actually been part of mobilisation meetings. In fact, I think there's one next Tuesday. So we have a mobilisation meetings with social care, with obviously the CIC, but also very clearly with St George's, the CAS team. And obviously within the CAS contract, they've actually had reflected in their KPIs for this year how they will actually work with this team, how they will start to share the records, how they will start to actually attend these MDT meetings, because what we don't want is them having an MDT meeting and this provider having an MDT meeting. So it's all about trying to get them in the same room at the same time. So align the contracts so that it should occur. Obviously, as I made an earlier point, it's about relationships and how we develop those. So far, early days seem to be quite positive. I think it helps that we've got colleagues like Rebecca and Claire and Rebecca's team really trying to be that central linchpin to get people together and get them really understanding how they can work together as well.
May I just comment on the evaluation of this, because I think the evaluation bit here is really about the sort of contractual stuff, whereas actually what we want to know is, we're doing this, so is care better for patients? Are the outcomes better? Are they likely to be in hospital less, or have just a better service? And what's the patient experience like, and all that stuff. So we need to evaluate all that, because we'll want to spin this out to more patients, because 500, it's a great start. There are so many more patients out there who could probably benefit from this. I'm thinking of everybody in a nursing home, everybody with complex conditions. So evaluation.
So a couple of things. So firstly, obviously the contract is for a defined period of time. It is not as such saying we have that money forever. So we're very conscious that we need to keep on track with the evaluation. The KPIs that we agreed, which I'm very happy to share with the board actually in conference, of course, is really around how we can actively monitor and measure the inputs that these services are having, and are they making a difference. And one of the things we tested them on, as Carol testifies, around how they are going to not just keep track of the numbers and make sure that patients staying out of hospital, but actually are they making an intervention from the patient's perspective? So is the patient happier and healthier? So again, we're progressing that with them as well, around how we can actually measure the patient views. I think we'll be coming out to Health Watch as well to have a conversation with those as well. So I think three things. I think we're very clear on the value for money case, that obviously this is in testing times. We need to demonstrate that it does save admissions and A&E tenancies and GP time. I think the second thing is we're very clear that for each of these services we're trying to be looking at specific ways of how we can measure them, and that's reflected in the contract. And then I think the third thing is the ongoing work around the patient experience and how does it feel for them as well. I think just finally, as you say, it's called the PACT ECP 500 for a specific reason. It's the top 500, but actually these are the principles that we need to put in place for every patient with a complex long-term condition.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And then just final thing from me is, in the EIA, you talk about how the pathway was developed in conjunction with local providers, key stakeholders, including patients and the public. But in your paper, it doesn't really say how patients have been involved in the development of this. Could you just tell us?
Yeah,
yeah, okay. Sure. So initially there were a series of workshops with various stakeholders, including reps from Health Watch in the development of the pathway. There are also a series of presentations to locality patient groups, as you expect. And for the procurement itself, there are also two lay members on the panel evaluating the bids themselves.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, any more from anyone else? Good. Okay, so what we're doing, we're asking the board whether we can approve the award to Battersea Healthcare CIC for the ECP pathway. Are we content to do that?
Yes.
Looks like we are. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for everyone, all the work you put in, and Rebecca hiding at the back as well. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we'll keep going, shall we? So, executive report. Anything to sort of news and what's going on, really? Anything to comment on that, or any questions? Okay. Performance report. Sean, would you like to just give us a quick highlights?
Yes, thank you, Nicola. So, as you said earlier, it's not the full year-end report. We're still waiting for some of the data, including on improving access to psychological therapies, where I'm still hoping we will have achieved the 15% access target, but can't absolutely confirm that yet. But it looks like we will have done. But the data has to all go to the Health and Social Care Information Centre and be processed and come back out again. So, I'm not going to quite start celebrating that yet. Some of the other things that have gone well, so on the CGP, as you can see, we've come in below the annual target set for us by NHS England, and that has always been the case in the past. It's also a year-on-year decrease, so that's an achievement working with our main acute providers and also in the community, primary care and so on. And diagnostics, though there was a struggle earlier on in the year, that's now consistently hitting the targets. So it was at year-end. And the dementia diagnosis rate as well continues to be well above the target level. So it's quite strong performance. In terms of what's not going so well, similar things really to what I've reported in previous board reports, so which the board is well aware about. So in terms of A&E, although the data in here wasn't still so good, actually in the last few weeks, A&E 4-hour performance has picked up. And for example, last week was above 95% every single day of the week, which is encouraging. And we've had a couple of weeks recently where St George's has hit the target, as I say, so that's really welcome. And obviously at this time of year, clearly we're not in sort of the winter period at all anymore. And you'd hope this was the time of year when pressures are a little bit easier and it should be possible to hit the target. So but at least it proves it is possible, and I'm sure, and I think that is partly the trust has made some changes within the department, and also I think it's good for staff morale as well to realise that you can actually hit the target and then see some results in terms of all the action that's happened. And I know there's been a lot of sort of pressure on the staff there, so I think that's something we ought to acknowledge, that we have seen an improvement. But clearly it's now about sustaining that through the year, week on week, day on day, and getting ready for the period when pressures will start up again in earnest next winter. In terms of the electives and access targets, in terms of referral to treatment, at St George's the target is still not being achieved, and we're consistently not achieving it. Additional activity is now being transferred to other providers by St George's, and that's now happening. So they're sourcing some theatre capacity in other providers, a mixture of NHS and independent sector providers locally. So it's not as if patients are being asked to go long distances, between places like Kingston and Croydon and some of the local independent sector providers. So that's beginning to happen, which, as well as the Trust putting in place some additional capacity internally, will hopefully start significantly bringing the backlog down, and we'll start seeing the target being achieved. But we're some way off from that yet, unfortunately. And we do need to sort of look, the Trust are implementing their outpatient transformation plan. As Eileen alluded to in the quality report, there are significant issues around the way outpatients is organised, really, and the whole issues around the way bookings are made, and IT systems, and the way that it's sort of decentralised some of it across the different departments, as well as having a central booking office. We may need to come back and think through what information we share with particularly GP colleagues around relative waiting times, particularly for some specialties where St George's really are still struggling to offer appointment times that would enable the whole pathway to be achieved within 18 weeks. And certainly there are some of those pathways where there are other providers who will be able to see people more quickly. I mean, Kingston Hospital at the moment is doing quite well, for example, on waiting times. So I think we will need to come back to that. In terms of cancer services and access, we're still not hitting these two standards, a 2-week urgent referral standard or a 62-day standard. We are working with St George's. We have regular meetings. Had another one with them yesterday on this. There was a stocktake on this actually at NHS England as well across South West London, not just around St George's or Wandsworth. So there's a lot of work going on. While some improvements have been made, and I think there's now better tracking of the patients in those 62-day pathways, for example. We're not yet really seeing improvements, and there's a couple of specialties where the Trust is still struggling to hit the 14-day standards, so particularly gynecology and dermatology. And they're quite big numbers in dermatology as well. A lot of those patients end up not having cancer, but there's a lot of referrals that are made. And so at the moment, as I say, they're two of the specialties where we probably need to come back to as well in terms of both cancer referrals as well as general outpatients, because at the moment the standards not being met and not really seeing a lot of progress in those specialties as well in some other areas. We've just done a section on looking ahead. We will change the report in this one actually, when we're looking at 16-17 data, just to reflect the fact that we have a new, it's not called an assurance framework anymore, but a new assessment and development framework, the CCG, and there are now around 60 metrics that they will be assessing us on, and we'll be getting our first ratings on 6 high priority areas for last financial year. Shortly, it'll be published by the end of June. So we will come back to the board and report on those. We've just noted some of the areas so we can see some opportunities and some risks in there. And you'll see there are some issues that are quite wide determinants of health. So things like maternal smoking is good, but childhood obesity, where we know the numbers need to improve, although there was an improvement last time for Wandsworth. And we're going to be looking at those sorts of issues. IAPT, for example, the indicator in the new assessment framework is around recovery rates. So it's much more of an outcome indicator rather than previously the focus has been quite a lot on the access rates, so not just the numbers of people receiving therapy. Actually the focus is going to be on recovery rates going forwards, and so we'll make sure we change the report, and you'll see the tables of indicators will going forwards will have these new suite of metrics in. To some extent replacing some of what we've had in the past, just to note that.
How exciting. It's sort of nice when it changes. It makes you take a different look at things. You've got to take the positives. Good. Okay, any questions or issues on that? Good, okay. Thank you very much, Sean, for that. Oh, sorry. Jamie, sorry, hello.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry, a really detailed question. Are there opportunities for do we actually have a target for that? Is there actually a target for the CCG?
well, there's no national standard. There's a quality premium, which perhaps bring a more detailed paper about that and how that works. So there are some indicators where effectively we are rewarded effectively if we're hitting sort of specific levels around that. So yes, in the sense that you could call that a target, and then the new assessment framework, yes, it is included in there as well. So yes, there's not a defined target. The problem with the assessment framework for 2016-17 is we don't quite know. We know what the metrics will be. Sometimes we don't know what you've got to deliver to hit the highest rating. So to get an outstanding rating, we don't yet know, as you haven't actually set that out yet. So we're not 100% clear how that will be measured.
Andy, have you got more?
Yeah, on the antibiotic prescribing, so it is something we track through our delivery group, and we track it by practice, and obviously all the key antibiotics as well. And Nick Bevan, our Chief Pharmacist, his team, to actually go out to visit all the practices as well. So we're certainly on top of it, and we even actually have around.
Yeah. And in fact, so last year we were quite ahead in this. It became a sort of a national priority, really, driven by Sally Davies, and so we put in place, as part of our primary care prescribing scheme, we have some quality areas that we want practices to work on, and this was one of them. It was looking at particular types of antibiotics which we should be prescribing less frequently than others, and also the overall antibiotic prescribing rates. And it's been incredibly successful already. Some practices, including mine, have really taken this on board and looked at their prescribing and use prescribing guidelines and really challenge themselves, and across the CCG our rates have improved already, so I think we're doing quite well on that. We've got a good base to start from.
Is there a figure for that?
Is there what?
Is there a percentage?
Oh, I can't I don't know what's been. Does anybody know?
Yeah, we would know off the top of my head, but we can bring something back to the next performance report. So obviously it's split down by about 8 different antibiotics. I know that 2 years ago we weren't performing particularly well, but last year, because of the concerted effort that everyone's made, we're certainly one of the top half dozen in London now.
I'll include the data next time, shall I?
Okay.
Jamie, or I'll give it to you separately by email as well. But
yeah, that would be interesting. Thank you. Good. Okay, Sean, thank you very much. Neil, do you want to do finance report?
Yes, thank you. So I wasn't planning actually on going through the finance report in any
to flag
detail.
anything.
So I'd happily pick up any questions that you've got, but it should mirror the what we brought to the board a couple of weeks ago for the annual accounts. So just to update on that, we submitted all the accounts all on time on the Friday following the board meeting. So all that was all gone through okay and resulted in a successful conclusion to 15-16.
Great, thank you. Anyone have anything to ask or say on that then? I think we did that one fairly thoroughly, didn't we, last time? Thank you. Thanks, Neil. And then we've just got some summary minutes for information from our various board subcommittees. So firstly for the Integrated Governance Committee. Anyone want to flag anything? Stop me as we go along. And then the Finance Resource Committee. And then Audit Committee. No, we're all good on those minutes are good, thank you. So we don't have any other business. So we've got a bit of time for some open space. We've had some questions submitted in advance, but the person who submitted them isn't here actually. So what we'll do is we'll do a written response to those questions. Does anybody else here have any questions or any comments they'd like to give to the board? Peter, hello. Hi.
Hi, I'm Peter Welsh from Helpwatch. I go to a lot of these CQRG and the rest of it, and I'm very taken by the fact that providers are providing very little information about the caring nature of their service. There's abundant information about safety, waiting times and so on. And I see to my horror that the latest report from St George's to CQRG has conflated safe and caring in their highlight report, and it's all about safety. So my question is, are you concerned that your providers are not really focusing enough on caring? We all know they're under pressure, but we don't seem to be getting the patient perspective sufficiently in the country.
Interesting question, thank you. Anyone have a perspective on that? Lucy?
So I suppose it's a really good question. When we think about safety, we think about the three domains of effective, safe and patient experience. And your question about the caring nature, I think, that is best brought out in patient experience. And there are a number of ways in which we formally capture the patient experience through annual surveys and so on. But I completely accept your challenge. I don't think that they are as robust as we would want to see, and we would then cite both compliments, which compliments and complaints go to the CQRG in terms of capturing numbers. But again, it doesn't do as much as we might like to capture the real quality of the responses that we get from patients. I think it's an interesting challenge that we could do more to.
Yeah, and of course CQC, it's one of their 5 domains, isn't it? And CQC will be at George's, and that'll be really interesting to see.
Quite a lot of your providers use the CQC framework, which I actually think is better than the NHS because it teases out patient experience into responsible and caring. But when they do that, they've got so little in the caring box. And we all understand it's not the easiest thing. It's far easier to count waiting times and MRSA and all the rest of it. But I'm just concerned from your commissioner point of view that you're not getting sufficient insight, particularly when services are under pressure, about whether the day-to-day experience of people on wards and different services is actually coming to you in your monitoring.
Yeah. Mike?
I was just, so Peter, thank you very much. I know we work together on community services at CQR. I was going to give you some assurance that, well, first of all, I was going to say I agree with you that George's quality account is fairly light on evidence around caring. I would give you some assurance and the board some assurance that each CQR, of course, looks at patient experience in a number of ways. So we look at complaints and compliments, both themes and details and numbers, as well as the response times, metrics around them. We look at the Make a Difference alerts, whereby practices and indeed patients and carers can and do give us real-time feedback about provider performance, and a lot of that's actually around experience. And the third thing, of course, we do is, as you know, the organisation is also involved with helping our quality walkarounds. So throughout the year, we have a series, a programme of effectively mock CQC inspections where we help members of Health Watch come on to help as well to dig out that patient experience in real time for people on the wards. For those that have never been on one, when we go as CCG board members, we take the quality patient lead role as well. We were invited to approach any patients on the ward or the service in question. We're not limited. We have free choice that the people would choose. And we have a fairly detailed series of questions we ask around whether people feel safe, cared for, whether the care was kind, whether their needs are met, around food, around visiting hours, around heat, noise, a number of things.
Yeah, sure.
It's about profile. Yes, I accept some of those points. I've been involved in those quality inspections. They're never published. They never come to the results of those quality inspections. Never see the light of day. They're entirely internalised within St George's. It's the balance is what I'm talking about. And there's so much about high-profile issues on safety and mortality that I absolutely understand are important issues, but when you look through all this data, it's very difficult to find some of those things. Yes, I accept there's Make a Difference, I accept there's analysis of complaints, but I don't think that response times on complaints is, yes, it's important, but not as important as the actual issues. And a lot of the work that goes on, obviously, as I say, doesn't come to your CQRG. Those quality inspection results don't ever come.
They do speak to quality CQRs. The other things that come up, there are a number of scheduled surveys that go on through the year. So a good example of maternity, for instance, is the PICO survey, which sits outside the CQR and is in the CQC. It's a far more detailed experience which each
I think it's a really fair challenge. Actually, I think it is a tricky area. So, what I suggest we do is, Sean, can you make sure that your team are aware of this, and perhaps we could again bring this to IGC and challenge ourselves there as to whether we really are looking at this in the best way. And also back to Health Watch, actually, could you help us with this and say what you think we should be looking at and what you would see we could do to raise the profile, and perhaps we can talk about this in the Health Watch exec meeting and try and work on it together. I think that would be a really, really positive thing to do. So thank you for the question. Malik, hello.
Nicola, PACT enhanced care pathway quality assessment. I thought you were going to ask a follow-on question when you did ask the question. On the race, religion, or belief or sex, it says that these are all non-applicable. And I was just reflecting on that, particularly when it says even though we're focusing on 500 most vulnerable, the idea is that it will eventually be open up to should we race, religion, belief, sex, cultural issues, sports rights, etc., all applicable issues? And in the equality assessment, it's all noted as non-applicable.
So that might be something about how the terminology in the form. Graham, can you help me with that?
So it could be, but I think, again, that's a really, really fair challenge, Mallet. And I think we referred to the evaluation. So I think when we do the evaluation of exactly who the 500 are, the level and type of service they've been receiving, we need to do that through the lens of equality and diversity. And is it 500 from a specific makeup of the community of Wandsworth, and or, you know, are some people not accessing the service in an equivalent, appropriate way? And as it rolls out, what might be the impact as you try and get broader reach across a greater number of people into all communities of Wandsworth? So I think it's something where the equality impact assessment needs to actually go further and deeper as the service grows and hopefully extends over time. But yeah, I think for the initial 500 will be okay, but as we prove the effectiveness and the reach of the service over time, I think we need to keep coming back and revisiting that as part of the evaluation.
Yeah, okay. Good. Anything else from anyone else? Vivi, hello, yeah.
Maybe I'm just one of the one. I used to work at St George Hospital myself as a volunteer for 3 years in a cancer ward. And I think their cancer care at St George Hospital is excellent. And met quite a few patients in St Hospital who came to St George's for treatment because they didn't recover properly. So I think their care is very good. And they do, and the consultants are excellent. And I found the staff was very well qualified. You know what I mean? Because quite often I used to do all the survey for the patients, and I used to talk to them, and I used to talk to the staff and the surgeon, and they all worked together, and everything was perfect.
Okay. Thank you. It's really helpful to hear your experience and feedback. Much appreciated. Okay, so where are we? I've got to make some closing remarks. It's really cold in here. So I don't want to say anything else. I think we should just move if that's all right. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to move into part 2 now. Just a reminder that the next meeting starts at 9:30, and date, Sandra, help me. 20th of July. Oh, there it is, yes. So it's here, and it starts at 9:30, earlier start, because we've got a packed agenda that day. But thank you very much, everybody. Should we have a 5-minute break and then come back?